Have you heard the good news, KJ?
Ooh, no, what is it?
Breaking news as of today. We're not getting just one former female U.S. all-around Olympics gymnastics champion returning to the sport. We're now getting two.
Oh, wait, so Simone, right? Simone Biles.
Simone Biles announced, well, did she actively announce her return 2 weeks ago? I'm not sure. Basically, 2 weeks ago, we learned that she is returning to the sport. She's on the registration list for competing gymnasts who are participating in the Winter Classic, which is seen as like a warm-up event for the World Championships. And the Winter Classic is in early August. Today, Gabby Douglas announced on Instagram, and she's taken a break from social media, but she came back today to post videos of her doing some giants, which is when you put your whole body around the uneven bars, and a very beautiful split jump above the balance beam, and saying she's returning to the sport.
Wow, look at that. So not only two gymnasts, but two black gymnasts. Look at us.
Look at us.
Look at us.
Given the only thing worth being happy about these days, in my opinion. Okay.
Well, thank you, Simone and Gabby, for bringing us a little bit of joy in this dark, dark world.
Yes, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Not Another Business Podcast, where we break down business news and cultural events according to rules we've entirely made up. I'm KJ Miller, ex-corporate consultant and current CEO and co-founder of Minted Cosmetics.
And I'm Danielle Dektar McCarthy, ex-corporate lawyer and current general counsel at Ness. And fun fact, KJ and I have been friends since our Harvard a cappella days because we are that cool, folks. Disclaimer before we start the show, the views we express today are our own and not those of our companies. Today on the show, we are talking about Hollywood Goes on Strike Part 2. SAG-AFTRA has officially signed off on an actor strike, and the entertainment industry is in shambles.
Truly. I mean, truly, shambles. It's wild. Let me just quote SAG's executive director, Duncan Crabtree Ireland. He says, "The studios and streamers have implemented massive unilateral changes in our industry's business model, while at the same time insisting on keeping our contracts frozen in amber. The studios and streamers have underestimated our members' resolve as they are about to fully discover." So basically, SAG did not come to play with you hoes. That's what I read in that statement.
How much does this matter? Not to make light of it, but if the writers are on strike, I guess it's just an additional punch.
No, we'll get into it.
Let's do it.
This is a real gut punch, because if you already have a bunch of scripts written, the writers being on strike doesn't necessarily keep you from filming your production. But now production has to halt on everything because the actors are on strike.
Oh, so, this matters.
This is a BFD, a big fucking deal. So buckle up. I mean, I think there's a lot to talk about here. I'm excited to get into it.
So am I. Let's do it.
Let's do it right after our shameless plug.
KJ and I have neither the time nor the desire to chase down advertisers, so we like to use this segment to plug our own projects. KJ, what are you plugging?
Always and forever, I am plugging Minted Cosmetics. Minted is short for pigmented. We create everyday beauty for every hue. And today, I would love to talk about our eyeshadow sticks, which I am wearing right now. I'm wearing the shade Better Off Bronze. We are back in stock on all 4 shades. They're selling out like crazy, and they are launching in Ulta in a month. So if you are intimidated by eyeshadow, and I know a lot of people are, I promise you these are so easy. It makes it look like you've done a lot of work because the shades are nice and nuanced and beautiful, but when in reality, you basically just colored on your eyelid a little bit. And there you go. It's done. It's easy. It's breezy. It's beautiful. So head on over to mintedcosmetics.com. The code NABP gets you 20% off. And with that, let's get back to the show.
It's Flashback Friday. As a reminder, this is the segment where we dive into a previous topic covered on our show and give a little update. KJ, what are we flashing back to today?
So today, I want to flash back to last week, just 7 days ago, when we spoke about Threads. So as you may have seen, the app broke 30 million users in 24 hours and then broke 100 million users in under a week. So I would say it has pretty clearly emerged as the true Twitter competitor. But my question to you is, what do you actually think of it? Because now that, we've been out here using it for the last week, I certainly have some thoughts, but I want to know, what do you think?
Well, I will say it has not necessarily converted me into a user of a platform like this. As I think I mentioned on the prior show, I was not an active Twitter user.
Right.
And like to the extent that I have engaged with Twitter in the past, it's when people send me tweets and then I open them, right? But otherwise, I was never someone who was like consistently perusing tweets or tweeting myself. And while I enjoyed exploring Threads for this podcast last week, I definitely reverted to my non-public conversation space app user status following the podcast. So, but I'm still logged in, so they still can count me as a user.
It's true.
What about you?
Well, okay, here's the thing. A writer on Vox released an article a couple days ago, and the title is "Threads Won't Kill Twitter If It's Boring." And then, spent the rest of the article basically laying out how boring the app is. Now, when I saw this, I actually threaded and said, this is a predictable take, but it's too early. I mean, she literally wrote this article like 2 days after the app had been live. It's like, it's too early. Like, obviously Threads is just getting started. Like, we can't call this thing boring yet, whatever. So I basically was like boo-hooing this article. Okay. Now that it's been a week, I got to tell you, I think I agree with you, Rebecca Jennings. So I owe you an apology. I guess I should thread that. I should publicly put it on my threads because it is boring. And it is, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. First of all, the reason it's boring, I do actually think it's going to get better. The question is it going to get better fast enough for this groundswell of people who joined to stick around and be interested? The reason I think it's boring is because right now, the only thing you can do is just see people's threads. You can't see, there's no trending topics. There are no hashtags to click on so that you can just follow what people are saying about a particular topic. It's just your feed, and your feed is made up of the people you follow and the other random people Instagram thinks you might be interested in.
Right.
And honestly, I think a lot of the draw of Twitter was the debate, even some of the hostility, some of the back and forth, the clapbacks, the whatever. Now, if somebody is on Threads clapping back at somebody, I don't know. Okay. And I don't know how to find it because I can't search for that. I can't see what's trending in my area or trending in, celebrities or trending in gossip or trending in Bravo, which, Twitter, by the way, would break down all these little categories. I can't do any of that. So I'm just stuck reading what amounts to people's very random thoughts. And the first couple days I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. Yeah. And now I'm like, this is boring. This is boring. One person is like, today I ate a peanut butter jelly sandwich and it didn't hit. And then, and someone else is just like, good morning, Threads. Happy to see you here. And it's just like, but I'm bored. So first of all, Rebecca, I owe you an apology. And second of all, Meta, y'all got to get these trending topics together or these hashtags or these somethings because it's just not hitting for me, at least.
Well, because now I'm thinking about also let me ask you this. When you go on TikTok, how much of your time on TikTok is you just scrolling through your own For You page versus you actively searching a hashtag, like some topic?
Yeah, the vast majority is just me scrolling the For You page. But this points to another reason why TikTok has eaten so much of Zuckerberg's lunch. TikTok's algorithm has figured out what I want to watch. Threads has not figured out what I want to read. They just haven't figured it out.
So that's the rub. It's basically like, unless you're going to be so good as to give me what I want, and no, you got to give me some power and let me search for what I think I want. And Threads has not done that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, take note, Threads.
I mean, we know that they listen. So Zuck, I just want to let you know, you got a little bit of time, but not that much time. So get it together.
It's time for our main topic. KJ, hit us with the facts. How did we get here to this SAG-AFTRA strike?
Oh man, I'm excited to get into these facts. I will start though by noting that this is a truly historic time. So not since 1960 have both the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild been on strike simultaneously. And fun fact, Ronald Reagan was the president of SAG at that time. So back in 1960, the last time, the two had a strike simultaneously. And at that time, they were fighting for residuals over films that were licensed to TV.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And I don't know if you remember this. I think Tina Fey wrote about this in her book, but I feel like I've heard her make this joke several times where she's like, I really hope right now Mean Girls is being played somewhere on TV, right? Because every time it plays, she gets paid. So, Ronald Reagan and them, they went on strike and they were successful because now when a film is sold to TV, every time it airs, the actors get paid. So that's just a fun fact. But in terms of this strike, it is similar to the writer's strike in that we did see it coming for a bit because the current SAG contract was up in June. And actually, they extended the negotiation deadline to this past Wednesday after a group of 300 A-list actors, including Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lawrence, penned an open letter encouraging the union not to settle for a mediocre deal.
Verbatim? Mediocre deal?
Yeah, basically the letter was like, don't settle. Like, don't let them screw actors over. Like, keep pushing.
Wow. All right. And so what's happening then?
Mm-hmm. So at this point, I'd love to dive into a really great article in the LA Times. It was penned by Stacey Permanent and Anusha Sakui. So as they note in their article, we typically see entertainment unions go on strike whenever some new technology is introduced. They write, since 1936, the industry's unions, often led by the Writers Guild, have gone on strike some 20 times fighting for fair and adequate compensation in the face of challenges arising out of unregulated technological advancements, such as kinescope recordings, television, cable, video cassettes, DVDs, and now the internet. So the last time actors went on strike was 1980, and this was over profits from home video cassettes, which is just wild because I know there's some subset of our listeners who have never even seen a video cassette.
Yeah, like, that's pretty crazy.
I was just gonna say, didn't you say your nieces listen? Have your nieces seen a video cassette? Have they interacted with a video cassette?
What? That's like the tiny cassette tape we're talking about, or not VHS. We're talking about what are we talking about? Cassette tapes that go for the radio, or VHS?
No,
like
VHS,
for video.
For video.
Have they ever seen? Is that what the V in VHS stands for? By the way, video cassette. Yeah. Interesting. Have they seen one? I think they've seen one. I don't know. No guarantees. Yeah, I mean they're young, so probably not.
Yeah. Well, that's the last time the actors went on strike. It was over video cassettes.
That's so interesting. I guess it also just shows how much more Hollywood values actors, right? Because if we think about how long it's been since SAG has gone on strike versus how long it's been since the WGA went on strike, right? Because their most recent strike before this one had been like 15 years, which is a long time, but still, right? Like they had reached a point at which they felt like they weren't being treated fairly, whereas actors have been humming along for 40 years.
Yeah, it's true. And I think actors, I think most writers would agree, tend to be, their strikes tend to last not as long because the studios push to meet their demands faster, because at the end of the day, like, actors are stars, actors are celebrities, right. Writers typically aren't. And so I think it's easier for these studios to sometimes capitulate to actors' demands than writers' demands. So yeah, it has been over 40 years since our last actor strike.
Wow. Pretty crazy. Okay. So they're doing it's a big deal then for them to join in.
It is. It is a big deal. And this time around, they are striking again over a technological advancement. And the advancement this time is streaming. They are also striking over AI, which we can talk about a little. But I think streaming is sort of the big elephant in the room, similar as it was for the writers. So they're fighting for fair payment and residuals from streamers, which again is pretty much what the writers were saying when they started their strike 2 months ago. Now, in the LA Times article, they did, I think, a pretty good job of illustrating the changes in what residuals look like pre-streaming and post-streaming. So they interviewed an actor named Eric Edelstein, and according to Eric Edelstein, he was able to build a sustainable lifestyle by guest appearing in 4 to 5 shows or films a year, thanks to residuals. He gave the number of around $500,000 a year, actually, particularly if you also booked a commercial or two, right? So he was saying, like, oh, look,
Wow.
I was able to build a nice life. And now he's saying, I'm making a fraction of that. And he said, as an example, he appeared very briefly in the film Jurassic World. And now this past quarter, because it ran on however many stations, cable stations, he made $1,400 in residuals from Jurassic World, for the last quarter. However, Jurassic World also streamed over the last quarter, and he made $40. And my guess is way more people saw it on streaming than when TBS aired it or whoever aired it over that quarter, right?
Right.
And if you were to put that in context, if you're an actor who hasn't booked work in over a year, which by the way is very, very normal for working actors, and you're living essentially just on residuals, if you in a pre-streaming world were making, call it $50,000 a year in residuals, based on this math that Edelstein has provided, you would in this post-streaming world be making $1,400. And that means you either would have to find a way to do 30 times as much work, right? So that your residuals could equal what they used to, or you're just sort of fucked. And that's what actors are fighting for.
And I assume that despite the fact that streamers do put out a ton more content, that's not providing 30 times the opportunities for actors to appear and work.
Exactly. It is not. Yeah. And as we spoke about in the writers episode, most of these streamers, when they create their content, it only shows on their streaming service. So there's only but so often and so many eyeballs that can watch it versus when, Warner Brothers makes a movie and then sells it to TV, they could air it on USA, they could air it on ABC, they could air it on, so you just have a lot more opportunities even to start collecting those residual checks. So, it's a vastly different system for actors.
Got it. Now, you mentioned they are also striking because of advancements in technology related to AI. Now, when it comes to the Writers Guild, I can understand how scripts would be generated by ChatGPT and all these other tools that create content. Is there a concern that actors are being displaced by AI as well?
There is. And what's interesting is I think actors are trying to just get even more ahead of it. Like with writers, we've seen these chatbots, spit out whole scripts. We have not yet seen a movie get made entirely by AI. But I think actors feel like you could still use my likeness and use my voice to create some amalgamation of a character, and then I don't have to get paid for that. So they're actually trying to get ahead of that, even more so than the writers have tried. Which is interesting because it's sort of like it's not clear that they have a clear depiction of exactly how AI is even going to affect the industry. They just are assuming it will, and it probably will.
Yeah, they are. I do feel like they're far more ahead of the game, though, than the Writers Guild is in that respect. Tom showed me a series of pictures. I want to say it's of like people. It's AI generated images of people at like a baseball game or something like that, and they were wild. like hot dogs were fingers, like, people looks like they were in battle while just watching. I mean, we're far, I think, from being able to make movies without individuals.
Yeah.
But I don't doubt that we'll get there. So good on SAG for protecting their actors now by trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, what we probably aren't far away from, though, is voiceover work. Because as we established with
that's true,
the Drake song, like, it apparently is very easy to make AI sound like Drake. So if you want a Meryl Streep-esque character to voice over your animated film and you can't pay Meryl Streep-esque dollars, you might just go the AI route. So
very good point.
I know Meryl Streep's people would sue, but you get it. Like that at least is, I think, right around the corner. So yeah, they're trying to get ahead of it. So the question is, now that they're on strike, what is this going to mean? And as you spoke about at the top, you were like, is this really going to mean anything? Well, the answer is yes, because according to Forbes, a SAG-AFTRA strike would mean actors would cease performing, auditioning, entering agreements for future work, and participating in press and publicity for current or previous work, halting major productions in the U.S. and abroad. So that's a whole lot of stuff that actors can't do. Not only are we talking about shutting down any and all productions that are currently in the works right now or that are planned for the future, but we're also talking about, premieres and press tours no longer happening, right? Which every time a film drops, you're accustomed to seeing whoever it is, Jennifer Lawrence, Matt Damon, going to the talk shows, to the late night shows on social media, repping. They're not allowed to do any of that. They're not allowed to talk about their projects. They're not allowed to be excited about their projects. Literally nothing. And award shows. Award shows are also considered publicity. So they're not allowed to go to award shows either. So now you have an entire award show season that might be wiped out. So this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and it makes me realize just how, like, I guess the actors truly are the heavy hitters, not just because they're stars, but also because they have this power to impact work that's already been made in a way that writers can't. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no one is waiting for the writer to be on the red carpet or premiere of a movie or to go do press.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, what's interesting is, to me, and this is, basically getting into speculation, what's interesting to me is the extent to which we think this strike will or won't help the writers. Because as you guys might recall, my good friend Adrienne, she's a part of the Screen Actors Guild. She was saying, historically, there's been a bit of a reputation that actors really just care about actors and don't necessarily care as much about the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild and whatever, but she sort of feels like that's really starting to change, and in fact, and I've been paying attention to some of the writers' strikes and the picket lines and everything else. Like, a lot of actors have been showing up, and not just showing up to take a photo for Instagram, like showing up, walking the picket lines, right, in real solidarity, and so I think there's a real chance that the actors being on strike could help the writers in their strike.
Yeah, that was my thought too. I've definitely seen a ton of content. Like I can specifically think of a picture of all the Ted Lasso actors that came over from the UK to Hollywood to strike in solidarity with the writers. And they were talking about how much they love their writers and how much it's the heart of the show. And for Ted Lasso, which is so funny, I really feel like it is the writers that make that show.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely seen what you're saying has been present, actors kind of locking arms with writers. So it makes me wonder, how much of this strike was motivated by the writer's strike, right? Like, is it happening later in time to put some ammo behind the writer's strike? Is it happening later in time just by virtue of when the contract was expiring? Would it, I guess we don't know, do we?
Well, so it's interesting because one of the articles that I read, I think it was maybe in the Washington Post, was arguing that the reason you're seeing this historic moment where both guilds are striking at the same time, which again hasn't happened in 60 odd years, is because the general tenor of sort of like the labor movement in America right now has shifted towards workers, and we saw that during COVID. We saw it with quiet quitting. We saw a lot of people sort of taking the power back from their employers. And some people think that that is spilling over into the entertainment industry. And that's part of the reason why actors are willing to push for more, because they're looking at sort of the broader economic environment, but also at the Writers Guild and saying like, yeah, you know what? We shouldn't be, settling for less. We should be pushing for more. We should be mandating that we're getting the residuals that we deserve, and AI can't steal our likeness, and all of this, that, and the third. I think it feels like it might be part of a broader moment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And in some ways, I wonder if actors are like trying to be the inspiration for people who aren't tied to Hollywood at all, but are, workers in a capitalist system.
I mean, now I think probably yes. And, actors, they wear their heart on their sleeves. And right. I feel like we're going to get all sorts of emotional posts from these actors about going on strike, which, I'm here for, because the reality is, like, when we think about actors, yes, we think about, the Don Cheadles and the Sheryl Lee Ralphs and these people who have made it. But most actors are not that. The vast majority of actors are living, paycheck to paycheck, and deserve to be treated fairly and deserve to be compensated for their work. And if 1 million people are watching their work on Netflix and they're getting paid $40, I think one would argue that probably is not fair. So I do think we are going to see a lot of actors start to post, because we've seen a lot of writers post, but the writers aren't famous. So, but the actors are. So I think we're going to start to see a lot from actors coming out and speaking out against the studios and the streamers. So I think it's going to make for some pretty entertaining social media at the very least.
Yeah. Oh God. I'm envisioning the really terrible video that started out with Gal Gadot at the start of COVID, where she started singing Imagine.
Yes, that came to mind for me as well. Let's not do that. Okay, folks, if you're listening, not that. And of course, I think, similar to the way I think people's reaction to that was a little bit like, okay, cry me a river. Like, what do you know? Right. I mean, I think there are probably going to be some people who have similar takes for the actors, if like Ben Affleck posts something saying like, we need to be paid more. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of people who are like, sit down, relax. But right. But ultimately, like, you need the Ben Afflecks to stand up, because those are the ones who carry real weight with the studios. So you need him to stand up and say, we are fighting for fair contracts.
Is there a sense of how long this strike will last? And part two to that question, is it clear whether SAG is saying that they're not going to resolve their strike until the WGA also resolves theirs? Like, has there been any explicit mention of cooperation and or resolution simultaneously?
You know what? I feel like might be a question for your husband, because it's labor employment related, but I sort of feel like, can a union say that? Like I think a union has to fight for the best deal for its members. I don't think it can also say, and we'll keep striking until that union gets what they're due. Like, I feel like then you're not actually fighting on behalf of your members.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess technically they can't, but I wonder if practically, if they will somehow.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I could. Yeah, I do feel like it's actually a good question for like a labor employment lawyer, because I really don't know.
You're probably right. Yeah. I wonder if also some of these negotiations need to be confidential or not. I mean, on the WGA side, we had seen releases of like demands and where the AMPTP had responded, right? So like that wasn't confidential. I don't know if that was an illegal like leak or... Well, maybe they don't have to be confidential until they actually sign a contract. Oh man, so many legal questions.
Well, I will say, just to answer the question of how long do we think it's going to last, I don't think it's going to last as long as this writer strike has been lasting. The writer strike has crossed, it's been several months at this point.
Yeah.
And it's, we've crossed 100 days. And I just can't really imagine the studios letting there be no productions running for longer than a month, maybe 6 weeks at the outset, because time is money. So we'll see, but that's my prediction.
Are these the same legal departments at the streamers negotiating both of these deals? Because if so, not to be too empathetic to them, but they're probably so tired.
Leave it to you to empathize with the lawyers. I would imagine yes. Same legal teams, and same executives. And I don't feel sympathy for them. But also, yeah, I think my prediction is 6 weeks at the outset for the actors' strike. What's your prediction? How long do you think?
Oh my God, I have no idea, but I hope short. I want my movies. I want my shows.
Mm-hmm. So short, just next week.
I don't. Yeah, let's get it done. About
wrap it up. Let's just wrap
48
it
hours.
up.
The lawyers are tired. Just get it done.
Well, and speaking of the lawyers, some studio exec, I don't know if it was an exec or a lawyer or someone working at a studio, anonymously said, to a reporter, "We will wait out the writer strike until these guys, basically can't pay their rent. And then they'll come back to the negotiating table and we'll get a deal done," which I just thought was...
What an asshole.
What an asshole, right? And by the way, they're already saying they can't pay their rent. That's why they're striking in the first place, right? It really is. It's wild that we're now seeing this whole story play out again at the same time, but you got to give creatives their due, which by the way is I think my final verdict. You've got to give creatives their due. I don't think this strike is going to last as long as the writer's strike, but I do think it's going to be interesting to see how these two groups support each other and what the actors, who the actors are who stand up and speak out.
Yeah, I've got some legal questions to dig into after this podcast. But I hope, even if not in a very specific way, that in at least some tangential way, this strike helps put the thumb on the scale and get things over the line on the writer side of things. Because as you very well explained, we need both of these things to be resolved to have all our good new content. And to keep us entertained and distracted from our lives. The entertainment industry is too important. So Get it together, Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, there you have it.
Okay, it's time for Judge and Jury. And if you're new here, this is the segment where we dive into recent news and ask whether there was a display of good or bad judgment. This week, we're staying in entertainment and we're talking about the Broadway show Funny Girl. They recently announced the cast for their national tour, and rising star Katarina McCrimmon has been cast as Fanny Bryce, which is the lead character in Funny Girl. The issue here is that the casting call stated that they were looking for an actor of Jewish heritage, and McCrimmon is Cuban American, not Jewish. There are Cuban Jews. McCrimmon is not one of them. Now, many in the Broadway community are up in arms and saying Katarina should never have auditioned in the first place. Thoughts?
Yeah, this one is tricky. It's tricky to me, and also tricky because I don't want to say the wrong thing to you as a Jewish woman. So let me just lay out some of my thoughts. Now, I will say I first heard about this on TikTok, and the person who was talking about it was saying the reason the blame should be placed on Katarina McCrimmon and not for instance, the people who actually cast the show, was because once an actor is in front of you auditioning for a role, you cannot discriminate against them based on their race, ethnicity, whatever, right? So you can't say, oh, you don't get this part because you're not Jewish, right? So they can put in the casting call, we are looking for someone of Jewish heritage, but they can't kick someone out of the room or deny them a role because of their race. So that is why this person was saying, like, given that the casting call explicitly said looking for Jewish heritage, Katarina McCrimmon and anyone else who did not fit that description shouldn't have auditioned. So I thought that was, an important point. To the extent it's true. I mean, I don't know who this person is, but that's what they said, and it sounds believable. And you and I have talked about this in some capacity for other roles. I think it was, who was it? There was
a Sarah Silverman TikTok that went around, and I can't remember what the movie was, but we definitely shared the TikTok with one another.
Yes, I think it's what's that woman's, Joan Rivers? Is she Jewish?
She's Jewish.
Yes, and I think the actor who has been cast to play her in the biopic is not Jewish. And Sarah Silverman made the point that this is, this is not good. This is bad. Like, this is erasing Jewish, history or what have you. And I think either you sent it to me or I sent it to you, and I was like, what do you think? And you, I think, broadly agreed with Sarah Silverman.
I am so on the fence with this, so don't worry. You can't say something wrong. I myself am very torn. First, I will say I don't immediately feel like this is bad judgment on Katarina McCrimmon. Like, she's an up-and-coming rising star. Okay, she's still on the upswing of her career. Like, you audition for roles, and Fanny Brice is a great role. And I do believe that it is the beauty of, like, the entertainment industry and the importance of the entertainment industry that people of different backgrounds can empathize with characters and stories that are nothing like theirs. Where I think things get dicey or maybe concerning is when the portrayal of a character whose identity, whether it's like a race, religion, or whatever, is central to that character, and there's an element of, like, fetishization. Is that the word? Fetishizing?
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly, like, what the markers of crossing that line are. But I think that's where you get concerned, is, like, is there that possibility? And are the people who are creating the art, like, truly understanding of the experience, of the Jewish experience, or are they creating a piece of art that, like, fetishizes? Oh God, fetishizes.
Right. Yes, and this is tricky for me too. And do you know what I think of? The actor, I think Eric Stonestreet, he played Cam on Modern Family.
Absolutely love him.
Did
he do something bad? Okay, great.
No, the thing is, so obviously his character was gay. Eric Stonestreet is not gay. He is straight. And Eric Stonestreet has said if this role were to be cast now, he probably would not have auditioned for it, because in this climate, he thinks, first of all, it wouldn't land and like, it wouldn't be right. Like, but 20 years ago when he was cast, or whatever it was, 15 years ago when he was cast, it didn't seem like a big deal for a straight man to audition for a gay character. And, I think any of us who love that show feel like he was made to play that character. Like, it just feels like he embodied it so well. But I definitely also understand gay actors in Hollywood being like, look, there aren't that many roles for gay men and women. And it's not fair that when those roles come along, we aren't cast for them, which is very, very tricky. Now, what I recall saying to you about the Joan Rivers thing was, I thought it was okay because Jewish actors can play non-Jewish roles. So in my mind, that meant it's okay for non-Jewish actors to play Jewish roles, similar to gay straight. Gay people can play straight characters. Straight people can play gay characters. And for me, that means there's like some sort of equilibrium and I can sort of feel okay about it. Where like I can't play a white woman, so a white woman shouldn't be able to play me, right? Like those two things are not interchangeable. But I don't know that that is true, you know, like that's just sort of what I immediately thought. But like, I think you'd be well within your right to say like, no, just because a non-Jewish person can play a Jewish role does not mean that they should, or vice versa. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. I don't know that I have a really coherent thought about this other than to say, I think I agree that I would not immediately call this bad judgment on Katarina's part. You know, like if you host an open casting call and you ask for the best talent to show up, and I'm trying to make a living as an actor on Broadway, I don't know that you can expect me to not audition for the role. You know, like I agree. I don't know.
And I think there are ways that the production could have asked the question without asking the question, which is like, tell me how you identify with this character, you know, like tell me what about the story, you know, resonates with you the most and why, right? Like you could have gotten around it if you really cared about it. I think she probably was the best, and ultimately as someone who loves Broadway, I want to see the best. Yeah, I think it's really tricky. I'll also say that I think it is okay to change your opinion based on where we are at any given time in society, right? So, like, I think if you had asked me 10 years ago, but I also was like an adult, you know, who had deep thoughts about things like this, I really wouldn't have had an issue. I tend to be a little bit more hesitant to immediately say it's okay now just because anti-Semitism is really on the rise, particularly in the US. And so I am a little bit more cautious. And I find myself thinking I'm okay with this, but wondering, should I not be?
Yeah.
Given where society is right now.
Yeah. And I will say the reason I lean towards it not being okay is because if I examine my earlier thought of, oh, well, I can't play a white person's role. But the truth is, if like, for instance, in a book, a character is written, but her race is never spelled out, or even her race is spelled out, like this is a white person, but nothing about her dictates, you know, she's not a Nazi in Germany, nothing about her dictates that that character has to be white, then I probably could audition for that role and play it, right? Like just like Black Hermione in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. So, but if a book were written and a character were Black, and other than the character being written as Black, nothing made the character have to be Black, but then a movie came out and you cast her as white, I would be upset, right? Even if there was nothing about whatever was in the book that like made it very clear that she was blackity black, I still would be like, this is oppression. And because of that makes me think like I should feel differently about this, and that I should think that it's problematic for Katarina to be cast. So,
well, I do think there's another element here that's about like opportunity, how much opportunity is there to be in different roles, particularly in Hollywood.
True.
And I don't know what the numbers are. I think my like general sense is that like Jews are well represented in Hollywood, for a reason, right? Like it was seen that the entertainment industry was like less than and beneath, which is why Jews went to Hollywood historically in this country. So there is a reason that's like actually rooted in anti-Semitism as to why they're well represented. But the fact is that they are well represented right now, I'm pretty sure, which is why I'm a little bit less I'm a little less concerned, because I do think there are means for them to play other roles, as you said. But I guess the bottom line is I reserve the right to change my opinion if anti-Semitism gets much worse. But ultimately, we'll say Katarina McCrimmon, I think it's okay as long as you sing well.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. All right, folks, that is it for this week. As always, we hope you are loving the show. And if you are, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review.
And be sure to follow us on social. I'm Danny_D_MC on TikTok, and KJ is I am _KJ Miller.